which means Manaha, which is mind, and Prayate is what something that helps you control your mind. That's why it's called mantra. We have so many mantras in the world today. And this mantra that we are chanting, called the Hare Krishna Maha Mantra, which is something you find in the ISKCON tradition, is a mantra which is also not something that's made up. It's found in scripture. And why we follow scripture is just like if you go for, say, our computer science studies, like you want to go to the authorized source to get information, right? In the same way, when you want spiritual knowledge, you have to go through an authorized source to find out what is what. And for the Vedic tradition, it's the Vedas, Upanishads, Puranas. These are the authorized source of information. So if someone is singing a mantra, it has to be authorized. It can't be something that's made up, because just like when you want to make progress in material subjects, you have to go to someone who's an expert in the material subject to get the knowledge. Same with spiritual knowledge. You follow the sages and you try and test different things out, and at a later stage, then you can tailor it to how it fits you. So that is the mantra we'll be chanting. You can put up the Hare Krishna mantra.
Yeah, give me 1 second.
So the mantra is basically Hare Krishna.
Hare Krishna,
Hare Krishna,
Hare Krishna,
Krishna Krishna,
Krishna Krishna,
Hare Hare,
Hare Hare,
Hare Rama,
Hare Rama,
Hare Rama,
Hare Rama,
Rama Rama,
Rama Rama,
Hare Hare.
Hare Hare.
And so we sing it in a musical form, so it brings a mood of meditation to it. And so initially we just chant 3 or 4 opening prayers together, and then we go into the melody. Yeah. Krishna Prasthaya Bhutale Sri Bhakti Vedanta Swami Iti Namine Namaste Saraswati Deve Gaurani Pracharine Nirvishesha Sunyavadi Paschatyanishatarine Jaya Shri Krishna Chaitanya Prabhu Nityananda Shri Advaita Gadadhara Srivasadi Gaur Bhaktavrinda.
Thank you for joining us today, and thank you to Bhargavi, our wonderful host, for hosting all of us. We have a wonderful program lined up today. As you will all know, our topic of discussion, which we'll come to shortly, is on the Mahabharata. We'll give you all the details, the breakdown, we'll also catch up from last time. Before we begin, since I know not everybody knows each other 100%, we thought we'd very quickly, as fast as possible, do a quick icebreaker. So we'll start right there. We'll come around the room. Everybody, please say your name, where you're from, and maybe your hobby that you're into. So, okay. You can start. And we'll come to this.
Some of you can come forward.
Yeah.
I'll go from the circle up.
Yeah.
If everyone, they can come a little forward because I think we're expecting more people to come in. So.
Oh, there's a lot of space here.
We need to start building more pillars.
So,
Okay.
I'm Rang. So I think most of you know me as Krishna, but everyone here knows me as Rangesh. So I'm Rangesh. I work at Carvana, and
Where are you from?
and yeah, I'm originally from Chennai, and yeah, that's about it.
What's your hobby?
Don't need to list here.
Just name one.
I would say I want to go skydiving. That's
It's not a
not
hobby, you've
but
never
it's
done it.
it's nice.
All right.
My hobby, I play violin. It's a pretty obvious one. Yeah.
My name is Krishna. I'm from
Where is the saxophone?
They're never with us. That's fine.
It's a me thing. You haven't played in years. Since middle school. High school?
My name is Jayanti. I'm originally from Florida, but now I live in Atlanta. My hobby is most sports, soccer, volleyball. Anything else?
My hobby is cricket.
That was what we all wanted to know, right?
Hi, I'm Shruti. I'm from Augusta, and okay. And my hobby would probably be cooking and baking. Hi, my name is Madhuri. I'm from Augusta too. I like traveling.
My name is Ananda. I'm from Decatur, and my hobby is just cameras in general. Anything they can do.
My name is Anil. I'm from Dunwoody. My hobby is like, I don't know, sports counts as a hobby, I guess. Tennis, and sometimes recently I started soccer. Yeah.
Nice.
Hi, my name is Dina. I'm from Lindbergh. Wow. Hi.
I am from Midtown, and I like hiking.
Oh. My name is Purna Chandranitaidas. Hey. I'm also from Midtown. I also like hiking. Coincidence.
You guys know each other?
No.
Yeah, hi, I'm Adarsh, born and brought up in Lucknow, India. Do a lot of things on a general basis. I would say hiking, poetry, photography, guitar, whatever comes to my mind. So,
We have to have the poetry Monday.
He has a poetry page.
What's that?
Yeah.
But yeah, you need to share that.
He
Bhargavi can
honestly
share it with
page
us.
too.
Yeah, I'm Vignesh, also from Lindbergh, but originally Bangalore. Hobbies, I would, on top, probably would be reading. I like to read a lot.
Yeah, I'm Prakriti. I'm also from Bangalore, but staying in Lindbergh now. And I also like to read a lot.
Do you know each other?
We are married.
No, we don't.
Hi,
I'm Priya. I am from Bangalore and my hobby is playing table tennis.
where do you live now?
In Syracuse, New York.
Oh, nice.
Hi, I am Vishaka. I am from Sandy Springs and I love cooking.
Hi, I'm Sriram, originally from Chennai. We live in Sandy Springs right now, and I like to play cricket.
You don't like cooking?
Yeah.
I'm not a big
Like
fan.
washing dishes.
Yeah, exactly.
My name is Kartik. I'm originally from South Africa. I live in Hapeville, Georgia, just south of the city. And my hobby is music and soccer. Alright. Well, thank you guys for sharing a nice icebreaker. Before we begin, a quick schedule of what we're doing. So we'll begin with our Mangalacharan prayers. We'll chant a round together very quickly. And then we'll get into our discussion on the Mahabharata. Today, we'll be going from chapter 4 and hopefully till chapter 6. And we have a little activity, some kirtan and then some prasada. So before we begin, we'll ask Rangesh to lead us through our Mangalacharan prayers, please.
Okay, so before we get started, for some of you who might be wondering what this is, so the Mangalacharan prayers, like I was mentioning earlier, when we want spiritual knowledge or we want any kind of knowledge, we go to an expert in that field. So in the same way, in spiritual knowledge, we offer our prayers to other spiritual masters who have already mastered this art. So the Mangalacharan prayers usually allows us to set the mood in which we want to pray, and the activity that we'll be doing next is the japa. Some of you may or may not have heard of it. In some places it's called japam. So like we did mantra meditation in this form, which is kirtan, or a video or an audio which will also help us chant along. So we'll first chant these prayers, and the other thing I did want to mention is just like we undertake different austerities to achieve different things. Like for example, you go to the gym and you do different exercises for the physical body. For the mind, the exercise is japa and other forms of meditation, which is why we engage in it. And this is part of what we do, and you can get a feel for it, and it's just more to give you a taste of all these different activities. So we'll chant this first to set the mood, and then we'll have the japa session. And Om Agnan. Everyone can chant together, whoever knows. We'll have it up here because otherwise it will get much longer. Om Agnan-timirandasya Jnananjana-shalakaya Chakshurmilitam yena Tasmai Shri Gurave Namah. Shri Chaitanya Manobhishtam Sthapitam yena Bhutale Swayam Rupa Mahyam Dadati Swapadantikam Vandeham Shri Guru Shri Yudapadakamalam Shri Guru Vaishnavamsha Shri Rupam Sagrajatam Sahagana Raghunatham Gitam Tam Sajivam Sadvaitam Savadutam Varijana Sahitam Krishna Chaitanya Devam Shri Radha Krishna Padan Sahagana Lalita Shri Vishakhanvitamsha Namo Vishnu Padaya Krishna Presthaya Bhutale Srimate Bhakti Vedanta Swami Niti Namine Namaste Saraswati Deve
एव च पतितानां पावनेभ्यो वैष्णवेभ्यो नमो नमः। हे कृष्ण करुणा सिन्धो दीनबन्धो जगत्पते गोपेश गोपिका कान्त राधा कान्त नमोऽस्तुते। तप्तकाञ्चन गौराङ्गी राधे वृन्दावनेश्वरी वृषभानुसुते देवी प्रणमामि हरिप्रिये। जय श्री कृष्ण चैतन्य प्रभु नित्यानन्द श्री अद्वैत गदाधर श्रीवासादि गौरभक्तवृन्द। हरे कृष्णा 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 हरे 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 राम 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 हरे हरे।
So, one round basically, as he mentioned, consists of 108 mantras. So you have 12 divisions on your fingers. That you can use that to count. I don't know if you're putting up the video.
Yeah, got it.
So how you can maintain count is, so 9 times 12. So you can keep count on one hand of every time you finish 12. And then we also have a counter here, so that might just help. So the video has a counter.
Chromecast should work.
Yes. In the meantime, yeah.
Hi everyone, I'm Varsha Jain.
Okay.
Where are you from?
I'm from Bombay.
And where do you live?
Stay the same community.
And what are your hobbies?
Oh, what are my hobbies? Okay, I enjoy painting, hiking, traveling.
Hiking.
Yeah.
A lot of hikers here.
Thank you. Yeah. Nice to meet you all.
Nice to meet you. So, yeah, this audio will help us. Guide us.
Going up.
Is the audio going
Yeah, should be up. Is it not coming?
Just play these. Yep.
Not coming.
That's fine. I think that audio is good.
Just turning the computer.
HDMI
This is louder.
It is louder. Just it's fine.
What's the format? There's always a whole guy before
Okay, we are ready.
Everyone ready? I'm ready.
Yeah, that's why I turned it off.
Shri Krishna Chaitanya Prabhu Nityananda Shri Advaita Radha Shivasadi Gaur Bhakti Hare Krishna 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 Hare 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 Ram 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 Hare 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 Krishna 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 Hare 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 Ram 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 Hare 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 Krishna 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 Hare 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 Ram Ram Hare 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 Krishna 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 Hare 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 Ram Ram Hare 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 Krishna 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 Hare 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 Ram 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 Hare 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 Krishna 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 Hare 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 Ram 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 Hare 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 Krishna 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 Hare 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 Ram Ram Hare 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 Krishna 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 Hare 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 Ram Ram Hare 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 Krishna 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 Hare 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 Ram Ram Hare 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 Krishna 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 Hare 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 Ram Ram Hare 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 Krishna 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 Hare 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 Ram Ram Hare 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 Krishna 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 Hare 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 Ram Ram Hare 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 Krishna 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 Hare 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 Ram Ram Hare 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 Krishna 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 Hare 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 Ram Ram Hare 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 Krishna 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 Hare 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 Ram Ram Hare 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 Krishna 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 Hare 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 Ram Ram Hare 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 Krishna 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 Hare 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 Ram Ram Hare 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 Krishna 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 Hare 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 Ram Ram Hare 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 Krishna 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 Hare 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 Ram Ram Hare 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 Krishna 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 Hare 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 Ram Ram Hare 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 Krishna 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 Hare 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 Ram Ram Hare 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 Krishna 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 Hare 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 Ram Ram Hare 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 Krishna 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 Hare 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 Ram Ram Hare 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 Krishna 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 Hare 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 Ram Ram Hare 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 Krishna 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 Hare 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 Ram Ram Hare 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 Krishna 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 Hare 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 Ram Ram Hare 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 Krishna 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 Hare 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 Ram Ram Hare 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 Krishna 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 Hare 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 Ram Ram Hare 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 Krishna 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 Hare 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 Ram Ram Hare 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 Krishna 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 Hare 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 Ram Ram Hare 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 Krishna 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 Hare 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 Ram Ram Hare 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 Krishna 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 Hare 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 Ram Ram Hare 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 Krishna 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 Hare 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 Ram Ram Hare 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 Krishna 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 Hare 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 Ram Ram Hare 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 Krishna 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 Hare 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 Ram Ram Hare 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 Krishna 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 Hare 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 Ram Ram Hare 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 Krishna 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 Hare 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 Ram Ram Hare 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 Krishna 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 Hare 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 Ram Ram Hare 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 Krishna 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 Hare 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 Ram Ram Hare 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 Krishna 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 Hare 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 Ram Ram Hare 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 Krishna 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 Hare 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 Ram Ram Hare 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 Krishna 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 Hare 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 Ram Ram Hare 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 Krishna 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 Hare 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 Ram Ram Hare 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 Krishna 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 Hare 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 Ram Ram Hare 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 Krishna 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 Hare 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 Ram Ram Hare 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 Krishna 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 Hare 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 Ram Ram Hare 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 Krishna 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 Hare 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 Ram Ram Hare 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 Krishna 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 Hare 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 Ram Ram Hare 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 Krishna 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 Hare 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 Ram Ram Hare 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 Krishna 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 Hare 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 Ram Ram Hare 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 Krishna 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 Hare 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 Ram Ram Hare 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 Krishna 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 Hare 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 Ram 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 Hare 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 Krishna 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 Hare 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 Ram 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 Hare 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 Krishna 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 Hare 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 Ram 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 Hare 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 Krishna 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 Hare 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 Ram 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 Hare 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 Krishna 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 Hare 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 Ram 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 Hare 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 Krishna 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 Hare 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 Ram 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 Hare 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 Krishna 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 Hare 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 Ram 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 Hare 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 Krishna 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 Hare 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 Ram 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 Hare 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 Krishna 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 Hare 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 Ram 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 Hare 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 Krishna 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 Hare 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 Ram 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 Hare 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 Krishna 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 Hare 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 Ram 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 Hare 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 Krishna 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 Hare 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 Ram 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 Hare 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 Krishna 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 Hare 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 Ram 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 Hare 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 Krishna 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 Hare 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 Ram 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 Hare 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 Krishna 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 Hare 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 Ram 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 Hare 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 Krishna 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 Hare 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 Ram 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 Hare 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 Krishna 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 Hare 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 Ram 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 Hare 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 Krishna 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 Hare 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 Ram 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 Hare 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 Krishna 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 Hare 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 Ram 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 Hare 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 Krishna 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 Hare 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 Ram 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 Hare 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 Krishna 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 Hare 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 Ram 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 Hare 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 Krishna 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 Hare 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 Ram 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 Hare 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 Krishna 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 Hare 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 Ram 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 Hare 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 Krishna 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 Hare 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 Ram 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 Hare 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 Krishna 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 Hare 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 Ram 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 Hare 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 Krishna 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 Hare 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 Ram 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 Hare 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 Krishna 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 Hare 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 Ram 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 Hare 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 Krishna 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 Hare 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 Ram 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 Hare 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 Krishna 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 Hare 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 Ram 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 Hare 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 Krishna 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 Hare 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 Ram 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 Hare 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 Krishna 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 Hare 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 Ram 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 Hare 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 Krishna 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 Hare 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 Ram 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 Hare 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 Krishna 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 Hare 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 Ram 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 Hare 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 Krishna 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 Hare 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 Ram 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 Hare 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 Krishna 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 Hare 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 Ram 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 Hare 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 Krishna 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 Hare 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 Ram 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 Hare 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 Krishna 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 Hare 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 Ram 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 Hare 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 Krishna 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 Hare 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 Ram 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 Hare 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 Krishna 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 Hare 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 Ram 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 Hare 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 Krishna 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 Hare 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 Ram 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 Hare 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 Krishna 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 Hare 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 Ram 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 Hare 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 Krishna 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 Hare 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 Ram 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 Hare 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 Krishna 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 Hare 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 Ram 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 Hare 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 Krishna 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 Hare 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 Ram 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 Hare 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 Krishna 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 Hare 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 Ram 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 Hare 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 Krishna 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 Hare 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 Ram 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 Hare 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 Krishna 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 Hare 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 Ram 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 Hare 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 Krishna 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 Hare 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 Ram 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 Hare 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 Krishna 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 Hare 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 Ram Ram Hare 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 Krishna 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 Hare 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 Ram Ram Hare Hare Krishna Krishna Hare 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 Ram Hare 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 Krishna Krishna Hare 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 Ram Hare 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 Krishna Krishna Hare 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 Ram Hare 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 Krishna Krishna Hare 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 Ram Hare 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 Krishna Krishna Hare 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 Ram Hare 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 Krishna Krishna Hare 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 Ram Hare 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 Krishna Krishna Hare 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 Ram Hare Hare.
That was a mantra meditation session called as japa. As he's getting ready for the Mahabharata session, I thought I'd quickly also mention with respect to this sound vibration, right? We often see that even in this world, like when we say sweet words, they have sweet effects. If someone says something rudely, or if someone says something that is rude, rather, it can also hurt people. In the same way, these words, which are obviously the names of God, they also play and have their effect on us when we chant. We may not immediately see those effects, and that is why we continually practice, and then over time, it's again an experiment that we encourage everyone to take up to see what change comes by, and we can discuss in more detail further as to what are the benefits of chanting. And for now, I will hand it over to Karthik, who will run us through a recap, as this is our second session on the Mahabharata.
Right. So, who here knows the story of the Mahabharata or has heard it before, even in a small way? So everyone has a bit of an idea. That's good. The purpose of going through the Mahabharata is, one, to inspire everyone to read it again, to go through it together, to answer those questions that we may have or the confusing pieces that we may have come across, but most importantly, to then go a bit deeper than just the story. The Mahabharata is so much more. I'd like to today, the way we structure our discussions is so, every few chapters we have a different person present. But today I'll be giving you a recap on what happened last time, the chapters we covered last time, including our introduction. Sriram will be taking us through 3 and 4, and Mangesh will end us off with 5 and 6. And we're not going too deep into it, but rather this is a summary that we are presenting and encouraging everyone to go home and read the book for themselves to really find the deeper stuff as well. If there's any point in a discussion, you have a question, you have a point to add that we forgot that you feel anyone should know, just raise your hand and we'll give you an opportunity to do so. We begin the Mahabharata, a good introduction, last time given by the parents of Kush. I'm not sure if everyone knows Kush, but his parents, well, special guests, and his father, his great Sachitanuj Prabhu, gave us a wonderful introduction. The meaning of Mahabharata is broken up into Maha and Bharata. Maha being the greatest, and Bharata referring not just to India as we may know it, as some may refer to as Bharat, but Bharata being the whole world. Bharata is the entire world. So the meaning of the Mahabharata, in short, some may say, can translate it into the great history of the world. This Mahabharata is not some story, it's not some folk tale, but rather it's a history. As we begin the Mahabharata, one can say you're standing on the shore and the Mahabharata is the ocean. Why is it the ocean? Why is it so vast? Just to give you a comparison, in the Bhagavad Gita you have 700 shlokas. In the Ramayana, 24,000 shlokas. And in the Mahabharata is 100,000 shlokas. The entire story of the Mahabharata is so vast, it's very difficult to cover it, which is why a summary is what we present. When we go to the ocean, when we go to the beach, our intention is to swim, right? You're going to the beach, you're going to jump in the ocean, and you're going to swim. This ocean is a little different. If we try to swim, not only will we begin to drown eventually, but we'll get very lost. But so what is the purpose of diving into this ocean of the Mahabharata? Is to find the pearl at the bottom. And so what is the pearl? Can anyone guess what the pearl of the Mahabharata is? The Gita, the Bhagavad Gita. Bhagavad Gita is the pearl that we are searching for. This sets up everything for the Bhagavad Gita. It allows us to understand the position of Arjuna, Krishna and his position in everything that is happening, and truly understand the difficulties facing Arjuna. The entire Bhagavad Gita is based around Arjuna's difficulties that he faces and how Krishna guides him through it. The beauty of the Mahabharata is because it has so many characters, so many instances where we as individuals can find what is fitting, what we can actually identify with. There's so many different people who make it in the story that you'll hear is going through difficulties that we may be going through every day, or we can actually find some similarity with, at least. At the same time, there are so many lessons in what happens within the Mahabharata. When we approach knowledge like this in school, especially, the whole purpose of it in school is to receive the data that you have and then vomit it out onto your test and get an A+, right? Well, approaching the Mahabharata is a completely different process. It is one of approaching it with a consciousness first and viewing the experiences of the people in the story, and then finding that connection, as I mentioned.
We have a special visitor, some special prashad.
And finally, to wrap up our introduction.
Welcome, welcome.
Surprise!
Someone asked what?
Oh, sorry.
Long time.
The jocks like oh, you're good. Where's Pooja?
Not here.
I got some wax. Came in with a bang. I know. That usual style. Sorry for interrupting.
Good. And finally, we ask ourselves, what is the Mahabharata? And the Mahabharata is about two different things. It is the art of living and the art of loving. And there's two sides to that. And the art of loving is highlighted in the Bhagavad Gita at the end. The art of loving God and serving God. Seeing Ganga appear on the banks of the river as a beautiful woman, Santanu had love at first sight for Ganga and immediately approached her, asking her to be his wife. Ganga stated, "I will happily do so on one condition, that you will never question me on anything I ever do. And then I will be your wife, no problem." Santanu, being in love, absolutely said, "Yes, no problem. Absolutely, no issues." They get married and proceed to have children. Ganga proceeds to have a total of 8 children. For the first 7, immediately after they are born, she takes them to the Ganges River and drowns her, but remembers his vow, the 8th son. At which time, imagine a father seeing every one of your children drown to death and you have to say nothing. He couldn't hold himself back. Approaching Ganga, he immediately stopped her and said, "I've watched you do this, I cannot take it anymore. What is the 8th son I will give you? I will take him with me and I'll bring him back eventually." Now, Santanu understood that she had to leave. He broke his vow and was very sad. Many years passed, Santanu being very depressed. He would oftentimes go to the Ganges River, and after a few years, he saw this boy stopping the entire flow of the Ganges River. Has anyone been to the Ganga? It's a few stories deep. I know you guys know. You can't really go swimming anyway. There's only certain parts that you can go to. But here's a boy stopping the entire flow of it. Santanu is completely bewildered. Who is this child? In his heart, he knew that somehow, I think this is my son, Ganga. The boy turns and sees him and vanishes. In front of him, after a few moments, appears Ganga and his son. Ganga promises that, as she said, her 8th son will return to him, and that is who he will have as a son. This son has been trained to be the perfect king, the perfect warrior by all the demigods, and now he's yours. And his name is Devavrata. And that's the 8th son of Ganga. Devavrata would then become a very important character in the Mahabharata, which is Bhishma, the grandfather of the Pandavas and the Kauravas. Santanu being a king and having one son, he was a very lonely person. But that didn't sway him at all. He was a great, wonderful king who never allowed himself to be swayed by anybody. One day, while coming across the Yamuna river, he smells the most beautiful fragrance he's ever smelled in his life. Following it to its source, he finds Satyavati. She is the daughter of the chief of the fishermen. She is the most beautiful woman he's seen at same level as Ganga, some would say. And he approaches her. Seeing her beauty and seeing the look in his eyes, she understood that Santanu desired her as a wife. He immediately went to her father and asked for her hand in marriage. And her father said, no problem, you can have her, but only with the promise that her children will be the kings, not your son Bhishma. They were rough at the time. Santanu, feeling very sad, knew he could never be so unjust to his child, and walked away and left in disappointment. I will change slides. This is harder than it looks. Santanu walked away, and I'll go back actually. This is a good family tree to help you understand, and we'll come back to it in a second. Santanu, who is with Ganga, the 8th son, who is Devavrata, becomes Bhishma, and here he is with Satyavati. We will get to that eventually. Sorry. So, Bhishma, hearing that his father wanted Satyavati as a wife, and understanding that her father had turned him away, went without his father knowing to the fisherman to ask him what was the issue. The fisherman repeated his conditions, and Bhishma took the terrible vow that he will never take a wife and thus never have children, so that the children of Satyavati would become the kings. And as soon as he made that vow, a loud voice from the sky echoed, "You shall now be known as Bhishma, he who took a terrible vow." And that is how he got his name. The king, being very pleased, blessed Bhishma, even though he tried to implore Bhishma to reverse this vow that he didn't really want it, but Bhishma wanted the happiness of his father. So his father blessed him that he may choose the time of his death, and nobody else can. Satyavati lived happily with Santanu, and they had 2 children, Chitrangada and Vichitravirya. Satyavati, before she met Santanu, had begot Vyasadeva, the Vyasadeva who is actually the author of the Mahabharata, by conceiving a child with Parashara, who was a rishi. We're just trying to speed up, we'll skip some details, but basically what happens is, there comes to a point where Chitrangada, the first son of Santanu, he becomes a powerful king and is actually named after one of these demigods who live in the heavenly planets. This demigod, hearing that there's another person on earth who has the same name, who is more powerful and more famous, became jealous and challenged King Chitrangada. Chitrangada was defeated after 3 years of fighting this demigod non-stop. And thus, Vichitravirya, the second child of Santanu, became the king. He was married to Ambika and Ambalika, but very shortly after marrying both of them, he died of sickness, with no children, no heirs. Now the Kuru kingdom, the Kuru dynasty, is left in this very difficult position. What do they do? What happens? Where is the heir? Satyavati calls on her first son Vyasadeva, who is a very great rishi and has many blessings and powers. And he agrees that he will conceive children with Ambika and Ambalika for the betterment of the king. And that is where chapter 1 begins, where this is about to happen. Vyasadeva first approaches Ambika. Ambika, upon seeing him, is so afraid of him because he's this rishi who lives in the mountains. He doesn't have any human contact, barely any, besides those who make the trek up the mountains, through the snow, through every treacherous path, just to meet him and get his association. And he doesn't wash himself, etc. But he's a very saintly person. She immediately closes her eyes. Upon coming out of the room and facing Satyavati, he says, the king will be born, he will be extremely powerful. But because his mother had closed her eyes, he will be blind. That child will be named Dhritarashtra. Satyavati is completely distraught. She's like, oh, how can a blind child become the king? Please, you must have a child with Ambalika, the second queen of Vichitravirya. Vyasadeva agrees, and after some time returns. Ambalika had heard that closing her eyes was not an option. You cannot have another blind king. But she too was scared upon seeing Vyasadeva and turned pale. Vyasadeva let Satyavati know that another boy will be born. He'll be a great king with so many great qualities. But because his mother turned pale, he will also be pale, and he'll be called Pandu, which is the pale one. Satyavati is still feeling a little bit like, this is not enough, there's these faults in both of these children. Please try again. Vyasadeva only agrees to return after 1 year and approaches Ambika again. But Ambika, being too afraid, secretly has her maidservant take her place. The maidservant, understanding that Vyasadeva is such an elevated soul, worships him in his entrance, treats him so wonderfully. And when he meets Satyavati, lets her know, oh, I understood that this was the maidservant, and the child born to her will have all excellent qualities. You didn't know it was the maidservant though, so this child will not be eligible for the kingdom. He'll never become the king, but he will be the best, better than his brothers. And so thus, we end up with the 3 children, I would say, the 3 children of the Kuru dynasty: Dhritarashtra, the blind one, Pandu, the pale one, and Vidura. And so we have a good family tree in case anybody has lost track of what's going on. I'll let you absorb that. As you can see, Ambika and Ambalika, the wives of Vichitravirya, they then get the children Dhritarashtra and Pandu. All good? Any questions? Any confusing points? We then move on to chapter 2. Pandu is cursed and blessed.
I don't know if all of you are able to actually see this thing. You guys want to...
You want to come inside?
Yeah, you want, if you guys want. Move in.
We don't bite, promise.
170-degree view and they should be able to.
You can come forward. No, I'm fine. You can see.
Pandu became the king. He was installed as the king, while Dhritarashtra served as his chief advisor, and Vidura in the same role. Pandu was a wonderful king known for all of his great deeds and was respected by everyone. After some time, Bhishma took it onto himself to make sure that they both got wives and begot children, so that the kingdom may never fall into the same issue that they had before that resulted in the birth of these 3. Bhishma organized for Gandhari from the kingdom of Gandhar, which is, I think it's modern day Afghanistan, right? Afghanistan. Gandhar is from modern day Afghanistan. Gandhari became the wife of Dhritarashtra. And Bhishma had organized for 2 queens to become the wives of Pandu. Kunti, who is from the same family of Krishna, and Madri of Madra. He wanted to make sure that these kings begot children so that they may never have this issue again. Pandu had, even though he was a king and he took on this role of the king so seriously and made sure that he did everything to the best of his ability, didn't really have a taste for it. He was a very spiritual person and rather enjoyed being in the forests, enjoying nature, and had no interest in being the king and sitting in a palace on a throne all day. For 1 year, he set out to defeat any rogue kings in the kingdom and bring peace to the land. After 1 year, he returned, not keeping one bit of the riches he collected for himself, but splitting it amongst his family. After which, he let everyone know he'll be leaving the kingdom. Dhritarashtra will rule in his name. He will still remain the king, but that he will take residence at the foothills of the Himalayas. Taking his 2 wives, Kunti and Madri, he had a home at the foothills of the Himalayas and would oftentimes be seen riding around the forest, and it was described as if though Indra himself was riding around the forest, hunting, gathering berries and fruits, etc. One day, seeing deer, as you can see right here, hunting some deer, these 2 deer were mating at the time that he saw them. Upon seeing him at a glance, They stopped and began to run, but Pandu immediately released 5 arrows and killed them both. Thinking they were just deer, he was like, oh, finally I've got dinner sorted out. But he heard a cry. This was not a deer, this was a human cry. Going to investigate, he then sees that it was actually a rishi and his wife who had taken the form of a deer. The rishi, being killed, cursed Pandu that just in the same way that Pandu had killed him as he was mating with his wife, that Pandu, the next time he would even approach to try to touch one of his wives in a romantic way, he will immediately die. Now, once again, we have the same situation. Pandu has no children, yet he's the king. He's left in a very difficult situation. Pandu lets his wives know, and they immediately take up a life of vanaprastha, completely dedicated to spiritual life. After some time, Pandu has this desire for children, but he doesn't know what to do. Letting his wife Kunti know about it, when she was younger, she was given a boon and given a mantra. When chanting this mantra, that she would be able to ask any demigod or any god to play form in front of her and fulfill any desire that she might have. And so, as you'll later find out, she had tested it before and it worked in terms of getting a child. Pandu was immediately completely over the moon and decided that yes, we should absolutely try this and this is how we should get children. As you can see here, a nice little breakdown. First, Kunti called on Dharma, demigod of Dharma, and from him they got the child Yudhisthira. After about a year or so, Pandu, wanting another child, asked her to invoke Vayu, the wind god, and from him they got Bhima. After some time, he asked for another child from Kunti, and she invoked Indra, the king of the gods, and from him they got Arjuna. Pandu actually asked for more children after this, but Kunti said no, I cannot ask, no more. You wanted me to have children with 3 different demigods, that's my limit, that's it. His other wife, Madri, feeling left out, even though she was the second queen, she never really made too much of a fuss, but not having children, well, the other queen did, asked Pandu to ask Kunti if she could help her get children. So in that way, Madri, thinking that this is her only chance, decided, okay, I'm gonna invoke these demigods who are twins, so I get 2 children instead of 1. And invoke the Ashwini twins, and from them they got Nakula and Sahadev. And thus, as these 5 amazing boys who were all imbued with extreme power and were completely, they were the children of demigods, and it was seen. And even if it was said, even at 2 years old, it seemed like they were already 10 years old. And that is where we end with that. And now we'll hand over to Sriram, who will be giving us a quick breakdown of chapter 3, and then we'll get into chapter 4.
Yeah, so in chapter 3 we saw a description of Hastinapura, how it was extremely rich. It had crystal fountains and arches made of pure gold, and how Dhritarashtra was ruling in the stead for Pandu. Pandu is in the forest enjoying time with his wife, his 5 children. He goes hunting one day, and then he shoots dead a deer who's mating. Right? The deer is actually a rishi in the shape of a deer, and the rishi curses Pandu that the same thing will happen to him. If he tries to get intimate with his wife, he will drop down dead. So Pandu retires from the kingdom, hands over the kingdom officially to Dhritarashtra, and then takes Vanaprastha, which is basically he retires to the forest with his family. And then he spends 12 years with his wife Kunti, and then subsequently his 5 children in the forests, being very celibate, right? He doesn't go near both of his wives. He does severe austerities, penances. Both Kunti and Madri, his 2 wives, help him in his austerities. But after the 5 children are born, he again regains a sense of youth. And then on a spring evening time, due to fate, providence, we can call it whatever we want, he approaches Madri, his younger wife, and as soon as he approaches her, he drops dead. Right? So Madri, being the younger wife and feeling guilt for being the reason for Pandu's death, although she tries to push him away when Pandu reaches over to her, she still feels guilt that she's the cause of his death, and then she goes into the fire along with Pandu, and then Pandu and Madri both ascend the heavens, right? So we are left with Kunti and the 5 sons, and the rishis who are around tell Kunti that this is not a fit place for a woman with 5 kids to live, so you go back to the kingdom. And Kunti and the 5 children reach the Hastinapura gates. That is where chapter 3 ends. That is where we stopped last week. Yeah. So chapter 4 starts with so the funeral ceremony for Pandu is organized by Dhritarashtra in a very grand way. State mourning is announced for 12 days, and everybody is mourning the death of King Pandu. And on the 13th day, there is a grand celebration, and things go back to normal. Everybody is doing what they're supposed to do, and the Pandavas are now integrated with the Kauravas, right? So there are 5 Pandavas, and then there are 100 Kauravas, and they start school together. So, and this is where all the problem starts, right? So Bhima is already extremely strong. So as a single Pandava, Bhima alone can tackle all the 100 Kauravas, right? So they all play together, they all fight together, they're learning wrestling, they're playing sports, and then Bhima alone single-handedly trashes all the 100 Kauravas. And this angers Duryodhana to no end, right? So for so long, he has been looking forward for being the heir apparent, right? So there's nobody, and he thinks, okay, I'm going to be the next heir because my father is the king, and everybody is pouring attention on Duryodhana. He's the center of attention, and then suddenly there's these 5 Pandavas, and then they are very gentle, they're all very strong, they're very knowledgeable, and then they are very, very respectful to all the Kuru elders, right? So everybody in the palace, everybody in the city starts loving the Pandavas, and they get more attention, and this basically angers Duryodhana. And every single day, Bhima used to pull all kinds of practical pranks on all the Kauravas, right? So he used to pull the legs of all the Kauravas, trash them just for fun, and these Kauravas could not do anything. So Duryodhana started getting extremely jealous, and then decides one day to poison and kill Bhima. So this is the first attempt on the life of the Pandavas, and for doing this, he goes to his uncle Shakuni, who's the brother of Gandhari, Duryodhana's mother. Shakuni is really, really angry, and he wants revenge on Bhishma because he thought his sister was going to get married to Pandu, but Bhishma actually married Gandhari to Dhritarashtra, who was blind, right? So Shakuni felt like cheated that his sister has been married to the blind one and didn't get the kingdom initially. So he wanted to take revenge on Bhishma, and he thought the best way to take revenge on Bhishma is to hurt the Pandavas, right? Because Bhishma was really, really affectionate towards the Pandavas. So he gives him this idea of poisoning Bhima, and he gives Duryodhana all the details and how to do it and everything. So Duryodhana the next day tells all the Pandavas, hey, I've organized this great feast at the banks of Ganga. Settle.
No, come sit.
Yeah, so Duryodhana organizes this big feast at the riverbank of Ganga, and Bhima is the one who is most excited about it. So because I don't know, we might have all read that Bhima eats a lot. So that's his USP. Although he is really strong, but he eats a lot. So Duryodhana organizes this feast. Dhritarashtra had built a huge pleasure house, mini palace on the riverbanks of Ganga. So all 100 Kauravas and the Pandavas go there, and Duryodhana organizes this big feast and serves Bhima himself personally. He brings the plate and serves Bhima, and then Bhima just keeps eating and eating and eating. And Duryodhana and Bhima ate so much poison that it would have killed 100 men. But nothing happened to Bhima at this time, right? So they all have the feast, go to the river, play in the water, do some wrestling, play some sports, and then everyone is tired. Everyone comes back to pleasure house, the mini palace, and rests, right? Now is when Bhima actually starts getting tired and he thinks, okay, let me just take some rest on the river bank and then I'll go back in the evening, right? So Duryodhana goes back and along with his brother Dushasana, they come back to the river bank, see that Bhima is unconscious now. So they tie the hands of Bhima, hands and legs, and then roll him down into the Ganges, right? So, and then Bhima is sinking, and then through some celestial pathway in the Ganges, reaches the abode of the Nagas. He reaches the Naga Loka, and then there's so many snakes surrounding him, and the snakes are like suddenly confused. Who's this man who has come here, right? And then they start biting him. And these snake bites provide an antidote to the poison that was given to Bhima, and then Bhima wakes up underwater in that Nagaloka, and then he starts beating these snakes, right? Why are they beating me? And then why are they biting me? And then he beats them. And then one of the snakes goes to the king of the Nagas, King Vasuki, and then Vasuki comes. So he brings his minister along with him by the name of Arka, and coincidentally, Arka is the father of Kunti, or the grandfather of Kunti, and the great grandfather of Bhima, right? So Vasuki, King Vasuki and his minister come, meet Bhima, and then Vasuki had this power of knowing what had happened in the past, right? So he could see that Bhima was poisoned and rolled down the Ganges by Duryodhana and Dushasana, and then they take him to the palace, and to prevent this from happening in the future, they gave him a pot of ambrosial nectar that they have in the Nagaloka. So it is said that one pot of that nectar will provide one the strength of 1,000 elephants and antidote against all venom and poison, right? So Bhima, being who he is, drinks 8 such pots. None of the Nagas there have seen anyone drink 8 pots of the nectar. But after drinking these 8 pots of nectar, Bhima sleeps for 8 days in the Nagaloka. In the meanwhile, in Hastinapura, all the Pandavas are really worried, right? So they thought Bhima would have gone back to Hastinapura before them, and then they left for Hastinapura, but when they reached there, they couldn't find Bhima. And then they came back, searched for him, couldn't find him, and then they were really, really worried. But on the 9th day, Bhima wakes up, and then he thanks Vasuki and his great-grandfather, and then comes back up, swims back up, and then runs to Hastinapura. He reaches Hastinapura, and then he tells his brothers and his mother what had happened, right? That Duryodhana had tried to poison him, and he went into the Nagaloka, met his great-grandfather, and all these details. So Yudhishthira at this time advises all the Pandavas and Kunti against taking this information to the elders, right? So Duryodhana had tried to poison Bhima, but once it comes out into the open that Duryodhana actively tried to poison Bhima, then the envy and the jealousy and everything would be out in the open, and Yudhishthira was afraid that what would Duryodhana do next. If it is known already that he tried to kill once, then he would just not care about any of the consequences, and then he would try something else, right? Some water. Right. So Yudhishthira and the Pandavas decide to remain silent and let it go. So Duryodhana is still surprised that poison that could kill 100 men had no effect on Bhima, and he's still wondering what to do next. And then the lessons continue. The Pandavas and the Kauravas have 2 teachers. One is Kripacharya, who is a weapon specialist. So he teaches the Pandavas and the Kauravas all kinds of weaponry. And then Dronacharya is a weapon specialist as well as a celestial weapon specialist, right? So the weapons that are delivered using mantras. So Bhishma wanted Dronacharya to teach the Pandavas and the Kauravas celestial weaponry, and they start learning all these kind of weaponry and horse riding and elephant riding from both Kripacharya and Dronacharya. And Arjuna becomes the best at archery, like we all know, and becomes the favorite student of Drona, right? So there is this one incident described in the Mahabharata where Arjuna is eating dinner and suddenly the lights go off, right? And it's pitch dark, and still he is able to eat without any trouble, right? So this gives Arjuna a lesson that all you need to become perfect at something is to keep practicing at it and then it will come automatically irrespective of what's happening, right? So then Arjuna starts practicing archery in the dark, and Drona sees this, and he's really astounded at the determination and the perseverance of Arjuna, and promised Arjuna that he will make him the best archer, the best fighter in the whole world, right? So this is when, and then the practice continues. Everyone is continuing their fighting lessons, their lessons, and one day, Ekalavya, the prince of a tribal king, comes to Dronacharya and asks him, "Hey, can you also teach me archery? Right? I want to learn fighting. I want to learn archery." And then Dronacharya declines to teach him because Dronacharya used to teach only kings, right, the sons of kings, princes, and this was a tribal prince, and Dronacharya declines to teach him because Dronacharya was employed by the Kuru dynasty, and then this Naga tribe did not come under the control of the Kurus, and he only taught people who were approved by the Kurus. So he declined teaching Ekalavya. So Ekalavya goes back to the forest, builds an effigy of Dronacharya, pays obeisances to that effigy, and starts practicing. Right? And then he becomes really, really good at archery. He becomes better than Arjuna, actually. So, and then he keeps practicing in the forest day and night. And one day, the Pandavas are going through the same forest, and they come across a dog whose mouth has been stitched with 8 arrows. Right? And then they are astonished to see who has the skill to shoot arrows at a dog's mouth and stitch it. Right? So they keep looking for it, the person who did it, and they come across Ekalavya, and then they see an effigy of Dronacharya, and then they ask him, "Hey, you seem to be a really good archer, may we know who you are?" And then he says, "I am a disciple of Dronacharya." Right? He himself says that, falsely represents himself as a disciple of Dronacharya. So Arjuna, being furious that Dronacharya has taught someone to become better than him, goes to Dronacharya and complains, "You promised me that you'll make me the best warrior in the whole world, but you've been teaching someone, and he looks to be better than me." Right? So Dronacharya is confused. "I haven't taught anyone that way." And then he goes to the forest along with the Pandavas to meet this archer, to meet this guy who's better than Arjuna. And then he sees Ekalavya, and he sees the effigy of himself that Ekalavya had built, and then asks Ekalavya, "Who are you? I've never taught you." And then Ekalavya says, I came to you long back, a few years back, asking you to be my teacher, and you refused. So I came back to the forest and built an effigy of you. And I've been praying to that effigy and practicing, and I've become what I've become now. Right? So now Dronacharya is in a bit of a fix, right? So he cannot allow someone to misrepresent himself as a disciple of Drona, right? And the explanation given in the Mahabharata for why Dronacharya becomes angry at Ekalavya is that the Nishada tribe, which is what Ekalavya belongs to, were not followers of the Vedic religion, right? So they did not care about the Vedic religion, and they were antagonistic towards the Kurus. So, and he had falsely represented himself as his disciple, which was against Dharma. So Dronacharya asks Ekalavya, "Okay, it is very nice that you have been keeping an effigy of me and learning archery, but now it is time for me to collect my dakshina, right? The fees that I need to collect because you have learned all these skills from me." And then Ekalavya, finally thinking that, wow, now the Dronacharya has accepted me as a disciple, says, "Whatever you want, I'll give it to you." Right? And then Dronacharya asks, I think everybody knows here, he asks for his right thumb. Right? Everybody, all the Pandavas are shocked, but Ekalavya, without skipping a beat, cuts off his right thumb and offers it as Guru Dakshina to Dronacharya. And this is where chapter 3 ends. Arjuna is very happy that there is no more competition for him, and all the Pandavas and Dronacharya go back. This is where chapter 3 ends. A very chapter 4 ends, sorry. This is a very controversial incident in India, basically. But it happened because Ekalavya didn't follow Dharma. So, any questions? Anybody have any comments? to discuss what happened here?
Yeah, it's a lot of information. We were actually supposed to go to chapter 5, but I think.
No, we had time.
So I think we'll just pause for a little bit and see if you have any reflections, any learnings that you've gotten through the information that we've presented so far.
I think what stood out to me is that even as children, Duryodhana was going to the whole way to poison Bhima with enough poison to kill like so many elephants. It shows you like from a child, you wouldn't think like as children, but it actually is put in reality. Like, you know, not all kids are saints. they can do these things, but I think that also shows us like even though people may seem like they wish the best for you, you should always be on guard. That's at least what I take from that story. They may be serving you with a smile, but you don't know what they truly have in their heart. So one is to be careful, but at the same time if we ever feel that hatred or that any sort of negative emotions towards somebody, that it's best we remove ourselves, or we try to change those emotions and look at the good in those people so that we don't become Duryodhana eventually.
Well, on that, I think it's also important to note that he's a kid, and who's his mentor or the person that he confides in? It's his uncle,
right,
who has evil intentions. So it's also important to kind of look at who you associate, who you take as your mentor, because their influence will influence how you act and behave.
Anybody else? Is there anything that from what we spoke that stood out to anybody, like any part of the story that was like pertinent?
I think one, the Ekalavya part is very interesting and, as you said, very controversial. But I think also it's reflective of the kind of that Varna Sankara that was going on, right? So Drona, being a Brahmana, is going to war, you know, and he's acting in the mood of a Kshatriya. And, you know, you have all of these mixing and matching of things, and all of that contributes to that ultimate calamity, right? So when you are by name something, but by action something else, you know, that again shows that you have a bad outcome. So Drona gets killed at the end. You know, so many of these things occur, and to us it just seems baffling, like why this is so unfair, this is not right. But if you read the full Mahabharata, karma has a way of, like a pendulum, going back and forth. And yeah.
Why is that whole sequence controversial?
Because it's like, he was basically harsh. If he cut his thumb off,
Yeah.
he would never be able to properly draw an arrow ever again.
Yeah.
So it's like, as Dakshina, it's such a harsh thing to ask that of all things.
Not only that, but in India, because in India, it is misrepresented that Ekalavya belonged to the lower caste, right? And then Drona, being a Brahmin, refused to teach Ekalavya because he didn't belong to the higher castes. That is how it is misrepresented
And also,
in India.
And also, they also try to misrepresent it as, yeah, he may have been skilled at that particular point, and might have been skilled more than Arjuna.
Yeah.
But people try to say that he was just trying to protect Arjuna and being more favorable to him, which in some sense is true, but he was also protecting the interest of the ruling government at that time, which is the Kurus.
Yeah.
Which is something people don't.
And
talk
he was
about.
being paid by the Kurus to teach the princes.
So
So
the Nishadas were
he can't-
open rebellions to the Kuru dynasty at that time. These are things that people don't actually take into consideration, because if that knowledge was given to him, he could have used that and trained other people in his tribe to become warriors, and then they could have waged war against the Kurus.
So so on that point though, he did exactly that later, right? He trained Draupad's son, who he knew was going to eventually kill him.
Right.
So on that note, I mean, that's a little controversial because it's like, for Ekalavya you can't do it, but for Draupad you can.
I think it's also that Drupada's son had approached him in the correct way. asking to be his disciple. While Ekalavya was like told no, but he completely disregarded what Drona wanted and put his interests first.
And I think that's where the idea, at least in our spiritual circles, is that it's not just one way when you go to a teacher. Like, it's not that you accept a teacher. It's also the teacher has to accept you to impart that knowledge. And in the Gita, actually, there's this verse which actually talks about it. It's Tadviddhi pranipatena pariprashnim seva, which means that you inquisitively ask questions to a teacher when you want to learn something, and then you also serve the teacher, and then the teacher is able to impart knowledge to you, or will impart knowledge to you, and then it has effect. And later on, we'll see many incidents like this where the relationship between a student and a disciple, where a disciple does something wrong, and therefore certain things don't go their way. And as Prabhu said, karma has a way of finding its way back. And same, like, that's the beauty of Mahabharata, is that it's full of, there's no black or white for the most part, there's a lot of grey. And that's how life is in general. If you look around us as well, we see a lot of grey. You can't say that anyone is like, maybe there's very few people who are like completely black or completely white. But for the most part, people are generally in the grey,
And also, Partha, to your point, it is said that the Nishada tribe didn't follow the Vedas. Right? So that is also given as one of the reasons why Dronacharya did not train Ekalavya, because they didn't follow the Vedic Dharma. And then teaching him would lead to bad consequences. For if you teach celestial weapons and all kinds of weaponry to people who didn't at least follow Dharma. But we also see, like, there's so many controversial things, like it might be hypocritical for Drona. He taught his own son the Brahmastra, and then at the end we know that he misused it, but yeah, in that moment he basically thought, no, these guys are not following Dharma, so I will not teach him.
Isn't Bhima's wife also tribal?
Yep.
And she's not a follower of the Vedas?
Yeah, but that Dronacharya did not want to teach him all these weaponry, right? Like all these archery and celestial weapons, because that could be misused. But Bhima's wife is not going to be affecting much
and
in the grand scheme of things, right?
If we are going by the book in terms of Vedic hierarchies, it was accepted that someone of a higher caste could marry someone of a lower caste.
Varna.
Yeah.
So Kshatriyas, Brahmanas could marry lower, but the lower Varnas could not marry up if they were men.
Yeah.
Yes.
That can go into an entirely different direction. We don't want to go there, but we can.
Does anyone else have any reflections, any parts that you liked besides us who spoke already? Does anybody else have any parts that they want to add before we move on?
I actually had this point where Arjuna was eating in the dark, and that gave him a realization that he can actually practice archery in the dark. It definitely, to me, showed someone's dedication to their skill and honing it. And you hear many stories even in modern times of different sports personalities or people in different artistic fields where they are so rigorous in their practice that they become good at it. And that's something that definitely stuck with me for the part that I'm following in terms of spirituality as well. If we stick to something and with determination go ahead and practice something, there's no bounds to what limits we can cross, or whatever seems achievable can also be surpassed and achieved.
Anybody else want to add anything before we move on for a short break? Good.
5:45.
I think we went over a little bit over time, so we'll stop right here. We'll give one more opportunity if there's any reflections before we move on to the next part of the program. Anybody? Thank you, Shira, for enlightening us on chapter 4, and hopefully next time we'll move on towards chapter 5 and 6. next part of our program, we have a fun game that we're all going to participate in, and it's a quiz of some sort. We're going to ask everyone to split into 2 teams.
Or we can just do the 1, 2, 1, 2.
We can do the 1, 2, but we're also going to move some people around because when we play the game, there might be one overpowered team. We also have a history of cheaters.
No!
We have a history of cheaters right here, so we've accommodated for that too. So please.
Both cheaters on a different team?
Yes. So we're going to go around the room and just say 1, 2. So I'm 1, 2.
1,
2, 1, 2,
1,
2,
1,
2, 1,
2.
1, 2, 1, 2.
1, 2.
Oh, we're not in a team.
2. 1, 2. 1, 2.
1.
Okay. All right.
Who's 1?
Can we get all the ones on that side?
All the people on stage.
Yes.
I just,
you will go on that side. You take my place.
I just want to put this on the record that I've never cheated before.
Okay.
There's just this perception that I cheat, but I've never cheated before. So I just wanted to
It's a harsh word.
set it on the record.
One?
Where are all the ones going?
That's it.
All